Yeah. And we can make sure we hit record. Oh, got it. Awesome. All right. Well, welcome everybody. My name's Melissa Dengler. I'm one of the grad support coordinators in school sustainability. I'm so excited to welcome students here and our alumni. This has been a long time coming, and I'm really excited about this event. The purpose is really to engage our alumni and to help our PhD students navigate the non-academic job market and to gain professional development skills that they'll need when they complete their degree here. So we will be recording the event, as I just said, and we'll first start with the moderated panel, and then we'll do a little Q&A, and you can put questions in the chat at any time as well as they come up for you, and we'll be making sure we monitor the chat and have those questions read aloud later. And I'd like to hand the microphone off to Mike Schoon. He's the associate professor of school sustainability, and he'll be moderating our panel today.
Great, thanks, Melissa. So welcome everybody. I'm really happy to be here with you all today. I think this is a super important topic. I'm really glad to see that the school is covering this. I'm really excited about the various panelists here today. Let me introduce them really quick, and then we'll get into that. So our first panelist is Carlos Aguilar Hernandez from the class of 22. Carlos is the City Energy Manager for the City of Phoenix's Office of Sustainability. He has his PhD in sustainable energy with a dissertation focus on innovation systems for sustainable energy. Brief career path after the PhD. Carlos started this position right after graduation. Before that, worked for the state government in Mexico, specifically the Energy Commission of the state of Sonora. So that's Carlos. Next, we have Gabby Gonzalez from the class of 2021. Dr. Gonzalez is the CEO and founder of CWA Tech Connect and former director of Intel's STEM education research policy and initiatives. She received her doctoral degree in the human and social dimensions of science and technology. Her thesis dissertation was exploring the third sector STEM landscape for girls of color, a feminist research study through the lens of nonprofit organizations, which provided new insights and recommendations to constructively disrupt the STEM education equity landscape. Our third panelist is MK Natarajan from the class of 2019. MK is a project consultant at WSP USA with deep knowledge of environmental footprints and LCA, providing data-driven solutions to clients from different sectors like technology, finance, agriculture, and food and beverage. MK got his PhD from the School of Sustainability in 2019, and his dissertation was focused on the food, energy, water nexus, climate impacts on agriculture, and virtual flows through food. He was a postdoctoral research associate at the Sweaty Center for Sustainable Food Systems between 2019 and 2020, and worked on true cost accounting for beef production in Arizona and Colorado. And finally, we have Florian Schneider, class of 23. Florian is the Senior Research Advisor at Third Way's Climate and Energy Program and the Carbon Free Europe Initiative. Originally from Germany, he has a BS and MS in meteorology, focusing on climate change in the Arctic. Worked for a year and a half with the European Space Agency on Earth Care, and graduated in last May with a PhD in sustainability, focused on sustainable urban heat mitigation and mediation between science and practice. Now he serves as an honest broker by creating data-driven solutions for short and long-term net zero goals and climate policies. Did I misspeak anyone? We good? All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. Let's go ahead and get started. We have some questions. So for the questions, we're going to rotate through the panelists. Is Carlos here? There he is. Okay. So Carlos, we'll go in this order, and I'll call you out. Carlos, Gabriela, MK, and then Florian. And then we'll rotate different leads for the different questions. We're going to try to keep these reasonably short, maybe a couple minutes. I won't be super strict unless we're getting way off from that. Okay, so I'll try to keep us kind of on track. So the first question up here: what influenced your decision to pursue a career outside of academia, and how did you learn about career paths? So starting with Carlos.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this panel. Well, I think I work for in the industry. In my previous job in Mexico was working with multiple stakeholders, including academia, government, and private companies. So and it was funny, like when this position became available with the city of Phoenix, multiple people reached out and told me about this, because people that knew about my background, they shared this job posting, and they said, "Oh, this is perfect for you because you had experience working in this government environment doing energy projects." So it was like a natural path for me to follow this path, and I think, yeah, that was my main approach to this industry, because I have a previous experience. I love doing research, so I'm still doing research with the city, so this is perfect for me because I have the best of both worlds, I think.
Great, thanks, Carlos. Gabby?
Yes, this question made me think a little bit, because my route, if you will, did not start in academia. I actually have always been in the industry. I worked at Intel for 23 years. I recently retired as of July of this year. So I'm free as a bird, I guess you could say. But I've always been in industry my entire career. So I kind of came at this academic opportunity a little bit on the flip side, because what kind of how that happened for me is I did engineering. My background is in electrical engineering and manufacturing as well. And so I worked in the manufacturing industry for, gosh, almost over 15 years, whether it was at other companies or in the fabs at Intel as a process engineer. So, but what motivated me to actually step out of industry and look at academia as a source of knowledge, if you will, is because after 25 years since I graduated from college a long time ago, I had not seen any breakthroughs in the representation of women and people of color in the engineering field, particularly at Intel and in high tech. You often find that the representation of women and people of color has not changed over the past 50 or more years. And so that after working in the industry for a long time and just stopping for a breath, I got curious, and the answers that I was getting were not satisfactory. So again, I kind of took a different route and decided to go back and find that answer through the academic role.
Great, thanks, Gabby. MK.
There were a bunch of factors, I think, that influenced my choices with kind of like going outside of academia. One was I'm someone who gets bored very easily if I'm stuck with the same topic over a long extended period of time. And doing a PhD kind of like taught me that. And going after the PhD, I don't want to do that anymore. So kind of like self-reflection helped a little bit with that piece. And that influenced with my decision, because in the industry as a consultant now, I get to work with a variety of consultants. So my projects keep rotating, keep changing. So there's new challenges, new topics, new technologies I get to look at and build models for, which to me is very interesting. So that was a major factor. The second factor, I guess, was also the number of opportunities that were available in academia. I know there's a constant flux in the number of opportunities that are available, either like through tenure track or like non-tenure track opportunities. The number of opportunities when I graduated was considerably larger in the private industry. So basically a chance of you landing a job with, especially from my perspective as a international student. So the clock starts ticking once you kind of like graduate because of the visa situation. So those were like a group of combination of factors that affected my decision.
Thanks, MK. Oh, and Flo.
Yeah, so I think I can repeat a little bit of what MK said, and also Carlos. It's like being in this place in academia, and I want to share that first. Like, I was briefly outside of academia in a research institution, but I came back to academia, and then there was another moment where I'm like, okay, what do I want to do? And it is the market decision on the one hand, and I want to be frank and say, like, yeah, academia is very tight. It's a very tight market if you want to go for postdoc, or actually even beyond that, assistant professorships, tenure track. But honestly, the professional market is also very tight, especially in the sustainability and climate world at the moment. It just gives you much more flexibility what to apply to, because you have these options, and that's what I did. And so I kind of rebranded myself and looked into this and was like, okay, what can I do? And it was more or less a slow transition from my master's over my work, then going back to academia, and finally figuring out I wanted to be doing something that is research related, but closer to the people. And first that was some research, then I did research in my PhD that was closer to the people. And then I was like, nah, maybe try policy or politics. And I did not expect that would happen, but here we are.
Great, thank you. So now we get into the nitty gritty. This time we'll start with Gabby. So Gabby, what were the tools, strategies, or professional experiences you used to get your current position?
Well, my current position is as the founder and CEO of my own business. But, you know, I also want to speak to the position that I had at Intel, a little bit of both, because my PhD really set me up in both situations. So in terms of professional experiences and strategies, I think all of us at some point in either our careers, inside or outside academia, get to a point where we have more questions than answers. And so some of us who are curious enough and are not satisfied, like I wasn't, with the answers that you were getting, or there's no answer, and you're really curious, and you have the passion to really get to finding that information, that knowledge, that answer that you're looking for, is important. So let me just speak a few seconds about my career at Intel. So again, as I mentioned, I started as an engineer. I worked in engineering for many, many years in the industry. But at some point, I had to stop and look around me and realize that I was surrounded by mostly white or Asian males in my field. And not only were women few, but women of color were rare to find in the semiconductor industry, especially in manufacturing, where manufacturing in and of itself is a very male-dominated field as well. So it was at that point, again, for me, was turning into, you know, what is my life's goal and my life's mission, and what kind of footprint do I want to leave as a legacy? And is it, you know, working 24 hours a day in a factory, or is it making a difference in the world? And I think that was pretty easy to answer for me long term. So again, the strategies that helped me to maneuver and pivot my career at Intel from purely engineering to something a little bit more social impact oriented was this desire to make a difference, not just for professional jobs, but also who's coming down the line, the young people. How can we make a difference in their life and help them make better decisions? So again, the fact that outside of my normal engineering job, I spent every waking hour volunteering or working with people outside of Intel, whether it was at community colleges, at universities, at nonprofit organizations. That helped a lot to, again, sort of define my sweet spot. And so inside of Intel, as many of you will find, no matter which industry, no matter which company you decide, or even in academia, this kind of applies, is there's many routes to get to different places inside those organizations. But I think what's really important is to really know where you want to end up. What is that goal? What is that end game for you that is meaningful and is impactful, and it makes you want to get up and out of bed and in the world every day. And so again, for me, was advancing STEM education. And so within Intel, I created a brand because of my volunteering outside of Intel, that people in my sphere of influence saw me as a role model, and they leveraged me as a spokesperson, if you will, for the company. And eventually I got tapped in the shoulder and said, hey, you want to come and help us in this space at Intel. And so I left engineering and joined that. And so again, I could probably speak for hours on this, but what I want you to all realize is that switch in my career happened because I followed my passion. And so when I retired in July, I couldn't just stop, right? You had to keep going. So the best way that I found to have sort of oversight and control over my career going forward was to start my own company. And that company is purely based on all of my knowledge and information and networks that I've gathered over the years. And my PhD was a big part of that as well.
Thanks, Gabby. MK.
Tools and strategies wise, I think something that helped me get to my current position was definitely networking and kind of like trying to find people in the space I wanted to work in. So identifying the space that you want to be in is definitely the first key step, like Gabby mentioned as well. So once you identify a space, or at least the broad topic that you want to work on, that kind of gives you a direction on the type of kind of people you want to connect with, be it on LinkedIn or be it on in person through conferences. Go to a specific conference that helps you identify these specific things. And then overcoming this, I think a lot of people have this, and I did too, a very strong a sense of very kind of like, I don't want to go talk to people, I don't want to socialize and like to strangers and things like that. That is something that I feel a lot of students face, and it is something that they need to overcome, find a way to overcome, because key there is the networking piece. Because unless you network, you're not going to be able to sell yourself or sell your skills. And without you selling your skill, you're not going to find a job. So those two aspects in my mind were crucial for me, was identifying the space I wanted to be in, topic-wise, skills-wise, and then finding out a way to overcome my own fear of networking in a way and communicating with others. I would, in my mind, those two were very important steps.
Great. Thanks, MK. Flo?
Yeah, so I think I will add something to the volunteering part, but also to the find your way. So the volunteering part, during the PhD, I recognized that it's funny. We think we don't have any time, but sometimes you're still able to put something into service or volunteering where you're passionate. And actually, these little things will help you frame yourself in the future. At least that was for me the case. They gave me opportunity to speak about my PhD outside of academia to people or anything the like. And that was helpful for seeing who am I outside of academia? What do people want from me? What can I give in that sense? And obviously, this is not a process that happens from 1 week to the next. It's a process that takes, unfortunately, month with an S, so 6 months or so where you go through back and forth, redefining what is actually the right thing. When you network with people, they will tell you, what is that? You're explaining it. And then you're like, oh, that's not what I'm doing actually. Okay, let's revisit. So that was one, those were two of the things that were really helpful and kind of intertwined and interconnected. The other pieces are obviously going back to the networking, utilizing Indeed, LinkedIn, other platforms. I myself have even purchased the premium on LinkedIn because I got eventually just feedback from LinkedIn who was looking for me and all the data when I actually applied to places. How competitive is that according to LinkedIn? But I got the information on like, they also think LinkedIn thinks you're good for this, you're good for that. And so I started applying for all kind of different things based on the platform that I developed over time for myself. And what was interesting for the current position now is after finding out what my top 3 are in terms of what I would like to do and expanding underneath below, as an international student, I had to find a job, as MK was referring to earlier. Like I didn't have much choice, so it was getting dire and dire. But I applied to those think tanks or anything like where I thought they have my ideal, they fit with what I want to do. And the position was a fellow position. I mean, we are talking about something that is 60K in DC. And I was like, who cares? I just apply for it. If I have something, I have something. And it turns out in the interview, they were like, oh, you're way overqualified. But did you know there's a position that you should apply to? And I'm like, why do I not know about this position? And they said, oh, we didn't share it on LinkedIn. And I'm like, well, that's your mistake. But however, I'm applying for it. And so then I have the insider knowledge and someone referred me inside. And so everything came from one to the next. It was super important. So just overcoming this fear of like searching things that are maybe not the perfect fit. Yeah, cool. That's my career.
Cool. And Carlos?
Well, for me, and this is not in the College of Global Future, it helped me a lot, like reviewing my resume, my cover letters. And yeah, I think that was a key part of my process. I was applying to other positions previous to getting this one. And as soon as I started to like visiting this career advising group at the College of Global Futures, I started to get interviews and started the process to advance in the process in the hiring process. Also networking, as you mentioned, like other people mentioned, networking, keeping your connections. It was key for me, like having volunteering also is very important for me because I have been part of, for example, I've been part of this Arizona-Mexico Commission for more than 10 years now, since I started in energy. And I started in Mexico and I moved here and I kept my connections, and I'm still part of the Energy Committee of the Arizona-Mexico Commission. I think keeping those connections and keep networking with your peers, I think that's key. And also for this position, having like previous experience working in Mexico with similar projects, renewable energy projects, energy efficiency projects, was also a key component for make a stronger case to applying for this position. But yeah, I think the volunteering, the Arizona-Mexico Commission is a volunteering piece, but also like when you volunteer, you have, and as Flo said, like when you volunteer, you also have the opportunity to share what you're doing and to receive feedback from your peers. So I think that was crucial, a crucial part for my strategy to get this position.
Great, Carlos. Some interesting commonalities across the four of you. Oh, did you have something, MK, you wanted to?
Yeah, just a quick thought. Like, I want to re-emphasize what Flo and Carlos said. Don't be afraid to apply for jobs that you may think you're not qualified for. You will be surprised. Someone told me about a rule of 10. If you apply for 100 jobs, you'll probably get through the filter for 10 other jobs. You'll probably get interview for one of those 100. So think about it that way. So just keep applying. It's bound to happen.
And this is a great segue into the next question too. And we'll start with you, MK. So how did you reframe your research experience to match those desired qualifications? Skills?
For me, it was mostly about the method and the skill that I was thinking of, which was the ability to use life cycle assessments and be able to understand data management, data cleaning, statistics. So some key skills that you want to sell. I did my research in the food ag sector, but right now I'm doing a lot of work with the electronics industry and financial industry. So it comes down to you being able to communicate what your core skills are and how you'll be able to apply those across the field. Thinking about your core skill, the methodology, the way you want to communicate the methodology becomes very, very critical. And I was not great at doing this, which is where asking for support with some career coaches within ASU helped a lot, because now you have this perspective from someone who has this experience saying, hey, you talked about building out a climate model for assessing yield levels in agriculture, which is a very specific agriculture setup. But the core skill there is building climate models and using it. So how would you use climate models for this other topic? How would you use it for infrastructure resilience? How would you use it for disaster recovery? Things like that. So once you start up thinking about the applicability of your skill set, then it becomes a little bit more easier to reframe it with each interview. And it comes with practice. It's not going to be like spot on the first time you go into an interview and try to talk about it, because our default nature as PhD students is kind of like to revert back to our comfort zone, which will be our research, because we've spent so much time on it. But having some exposure to other areas of interest and key elements that's going on in those fields, like if you're interviewing for a technology company, look at what's going on with technology. You're seeing a lot of AI-based research right now that's going on. So maybe think about how your skills or the methods that you're deploying will be applicable to that space when you're interviewing for someone like Amazon or Microsoft or NVIDIA. How would that apply? So that's kind of like the approach I took in terms of reframing my research, was definitely trying to identify that key skill set that I want to sell, and then how would that be applicable to the company that I'm interviewing with.
Great. Florian?
Wow. So I think when we talk about the own research experience and how that informs the new job in that sense, what you're applying for, it's really funny when I have a PhD in sustainability, the school offers one in sustainable energy, and now I do sustainable energy. It's kind of a funny suspect, like you transition through things. Topics are not fit because what we all are system thinker, and some are more educated in quantitative science or quantitative method other than qualitative method. And for me, what is really relevant is not only my PhD, but also my background in climate science for my bachelor's and master's. So that all came back. And I was being asked, like MK just said, climate models. That's what I did in my master's. So people were like, oh yeah, what about energy systems models? Can you bring some similarities, etc.? And I'm like, okay, here's the start. That's what I would do. Can you explain a problem that you faced that was actually for the application that I had right now? Can you explain a problem that you faced and what the solution was? And I chose a technical problem with a quantitative method, and they really liked that approach, and I knew it was a more data-driven position, so that was really helpful. So it depends on the position, also how you frame your skills in that sense, and some were more qualitative, and I was building on the qualitative pieces that I had. I'm like, I'm a good writer. I can listen. I can translate knowledge from science to practice, and it was really helpful to have this experience. And then in other moments at the quantitative side where I will be frank and just say, yeah, I'm a nerd. You know, I do these kind of things. Not to say that qualitative scientists cannot be nerds. Just be absolutely true here. But just like, oh, I love numbers. I can handle the numbers. Give me anything, and I'll try to solve it for you in some way or another. And so yeah, my research itself was on heat, and I had quantitative and qualitative methods that I used, and so I could translate that always into the different needs. And in the end, the application material was my now supervisor told me that was these two questions that I had to answer on the point, you know, like they asked, oh, what did you use to solve a problem? What did you do here? Those were really important questions that had more weight than the resume itself to go into the interview process. And I think that's where it's really relevant. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks. Carlos.
I think for me, my experience was just framing the research experience as another professional experience. And because my research experience was limited, so I just frame it as another professional experience. And I think that's important to acknowledge that we spent 4 or 5 years doing this degree, and we had experience doing it. Like we did research, we did teaching, so it's important to acknowledge that. And on the other hand, like following on the flow and MK ideas, I was all my summers for I don't remember how many summers I spent at ASU, but I worked for this knowledge exchange for resilience group, and it's not related at all with energy. But now I'm doing, for example, with the city of Phoenix, I'm doing this energy access plan. I'm participating and I'm leading this effort. And this is about resilience, because we are trying to ensure that people have like reliable, sustainable, and affordable energy for the entire city. So this is a huge effort that the city is doing, and we're doing the planning for that. And now my resilience piece is coming to solve a problem that we have in the present. So I think this is really important. You don't know, you have to, yeah, you frame your research experience in a way to get a position, but sometimes you just not mention everything you did, but at the end you might use it for any other projects you have. So yeah, I think it's important to acknowledge we have this experience and show that to the hiring managers that we have this skills and we develop this part. And when you are part of a research lab, for example, you are an employee. You have to follow rules. You have deadlines. You have goals, and that's also valuable in the market. So I think just acknowledging that we spend all these years getting a degree, but also getting experience that is useful in the market.
Thanks, Carlos. Gabby?
Yeah, I'm again listening to everybody. I'm going, yeah, that all sounds great. I mean, I can relate to that. I think we have a a lot of threads, like you said, that kind of bring us together. I think my research experience was really valuable in the industry because for the most part, engineering is a practical application of science. And so the research that companies like Intel do are more around technology research, but not a lot of research outside of that. Even our Intel fellows, for example, are all PhDs or have a lot of recognition worldwide on their expertise. But even Intel, I think, opened up to consider that there's other kinds of expertise that are valuable to tech companies, like educational type of knowledge or people, societal knowledge, because it's how people use technology that also matters, not just the technology itself. So I think bringing kind of a different approach and a different perspective, depending on, again, what your emphasis is and your focus on your research, can really help, what I would like to say, to find solutions, right? I mean, again, the problem solver is one of the things that manifests through the research experience, but also finding solutions and bringing all of the skills, again, as Flo said, whether it's qualitative or quantitative, but it's what do you do with all that knowledge that matters, I think. And so a lot of companies, a lot of hiring managers, as you know, I was a hiring manager at one time, are looking for, what did you do with your experience, with your research experience? How are you putting that into practice? What results can you achieve, or what results have you achieved in the past? Bring your research to bear on the real world, right? How do you apply it? How do you use it to help us solve problems in innovative ways, looking outside of what's always been done, doing things differently? I think that's what your PhD gives you, is that sort of magic wand to say, I can bring something new to the table. And so I think it's really important, again, to bring all of those collective skill sets that you experience. And specifically to the question, I don't necessarily include my dissertation per se, or my research skills per se in my CV. I rather talk about what I've accomplished based on those experiences. So accomplishments, results is really what I think will help to, at least from an entrepreneurship perspective, what will help my business gain traction, right? If I can show results. But those results are because of all of the different skills and experiences that I had while going through the PhD program.
Thanks, Gabby. Any final thoughts from anyone before we move on to the next question? Okay, now that we're warmed up, we've got a nice juicy one for you. Flo, we're going to start with you. How did networking play a role in your job search, and what networking advice do you have for current students?
I mean, I would say we briefly touched on it at the very beginning on how networking plays a role, but also I personally have made the mistake to start networking way too late outside of academia, using the people that are already available to me to connect me to outside academia resources. And what's so funny is just the fact, and now working in the private sector, it's just like people work in these private sectors on 40-hour jobs or more, and it's part of their job to network. That is part of the time. So you ask them to use their work time to talk to you, which is a funny thing. But you always think they have to make up extra time. So that was my problem, why I wasn't asking. So eventually I went on with the networking and reached out to different people, whether it was at ASU, professors, deans, etc., and then connected from those two different organizations. Then we also have with ASU a DC campus, and I wanted to go to DC, and I knew at DC we have different organizations that have different like directors, and I connected with those directors, and then I had conversations with them, and they informed not only my resume, which I looked at and were like, you shouldn't do that, or they informed me on like, when you should apply to them, you should talk to them, and it's just kind of a snowball effect in that way. And yeah, I mean, I briefly mentioned it already. I don't know exactly what networking node is responsible for me having this particular job, other than that I applied for a job that was under my expectations, and that person who was doing the interview then brought it forward. And so that is one networking link that I was completely not expecting, but it happened. And because of all the other network, I was potentially able to answer questions more in the way they wanted to hear it. As Gabby was talking about, this is like, talk about who you are and how you can bring value with your research or your skill sets. And yeah, so networking was a big role. Start early. That's my one advice, because networking and job market is a job in itself. And yeah, so I don't want to use the word utilize. Someone told me, don't do it, replace it with use. It's much easier. Use the time now to start your networking.
Excellent. I'll have to remember that advice as well. Carlos.
Hello. Well, I think, yeah, we covered something like doing volunteering to networking, but also like on purpose, like Flo said, like networking on purpose. But I think another way to network is to asking for help. I'm terrible for asking for help. I apply for several jobs that, as I said, like without asking anyone, reviewing my resume and my cover letters, and I'm just applying and not getting anything, any calls. So at the moment I ask for help, everything changed. So and that's also a kind of networking, because you have another person knowing about your research, knowing about your achievements, your previous your background and everything, your previous roles. So I think that's a way to network as well. So it's important to ask a friend, the university, your college professors. You can ask, and now that I'm in this position, I think I met like 3 students from ASU. They are studying like bachelor's in sustainability or master's, and they approached to me and like they want to know what my role is and how we see things from the city and how we're doing and the project we have. So I think that's it's great to give back something and also like to guide future generations, like they're like graduating from their bachelor's and masters. And I think that's a great way to start. And I think, as Flo said, like they're studying early, and that's great. So it's just encouraging everyone to start as soon as possible.
Thanks. I like that play it forward message. Gabby.
Yes, definitely. As far as networking, I couldn't agree with everybody and emphasize the it's a gold mine, networking, because you never know where your next opportunity is going to come from. I in addition to what everybody's already said, I think that you should try to network across sectors as much as possible. Don't just stay within your comfort zone. Step out of that comfort zone. Network with academia. I know when I was in my program, I used to go to ST Global, for example, to present my research. And I always got very nervous because I didn't speak like like a professor or a graduate student, pursuing their PhD, I spoke like an industry person, and I was always very shy. But again, I made great people, got great insight, got a lot of advice. Network with people in industry, especially in organizations that are doing the kind of work that you want to do. Networking public spaces, in government agencies, and also nonprofits. Because of, I just want to say, because when I was at Intel as an engineer, I didn't network. I mean, I was in a cave most of the time working out engineering problems. But I think we've all said volunteering is a great way to network outside of like social media, and it's if you can do physical volunteering and meet people in person, because there's something about meeting people in person that just doesn't translate the same when you're digital. So I would just encourage. I think if it wasn't because of my networking across all of those sectors, I wouldn't feel as confident to be on my own, not working for somebody else or another organization, but really it gave me enough confidence to step out of that comfort zone and say, I can do this. And the last thing I'll say about networking is, I think, I forgot if it was MK or somebody who said, it's purposeful, has to be. You can't leave it to chance. I actually, even though I worked at Intel, and I did quite a bit of travel in business through that, I also funded myself some trips to specific events and convenings, and especially where STEM experts were gathering, STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math education, because that's how you get to know people, and that's how people get to know you. So you're investing in yourself, basically.
Great point. Thanks, Gabby. MK.
I think there's kind of like two lines of thought with regards to networking. Like Gabby pointed out, one is the in-person version, the other one is the online version, or the for the in-person one, it does have a lot of benefits for sure. Just as an example, Greenbiz happens every year in Phoenix. That's a great opportunity to go out and put yourself out there, because typically there's a lot of people from a lot of different areas. That's the earlier, like Flo said, the earlier you can get into that space and kind of like put yourself out there to see how you can talk about your skills and the things that you can bring to the table to a different group of people at every moment of time during the conference. That gives you not just more confidence, but the ability to talk about your own skill sets in differing conditions, which is a great skill to have in an interview, because whatever they throw at you, you're going to adapt to it pretty quickly. So going to events like Greenbiz, which is not necessarily an academic conference, is a very, very good step to kind of like think about the job opportunities in a non-academic space. The second piece here with regards to the social media-based networking is this is a mistake I've been noticing a lot with a lot of communication coming through LinkedIn. Is it is not encouraging for me to respond to someone when they just say, hey, you're in the sustainability space, I wanted to connect with you. I'm like, you're not giving me any perspective on this. I don't understand what you want. So kind of like being a little bit more purposeful, like Gabby said, when you're reaching out to someone, especially in the social media space, is going to be important, because you need to show that you're making an effort to kind of like build some form of a relationship when it's not in person, because it's easier to do that when you're in person kind of like a context. So maybe do some background research on that person, the topics that person's worked on, reach out to them based on those things. Just like how you reached out to your prof when you were looking for a PhD. You would have done that research. You may not need to put in as much effort, but just a little bit, so that you kind of like communicate that, hey, I have done my background homework. I want to connect with you and talk about these things. That if that doesn't come through, then the online networking piece just falls apart. It's not a good way to connect with people. And I do want to reinforce something that Carlos said: ask for help. Your profs are like super duper well connected, not just within academia, but outside of academia too. They've given speeches in other locations. They've connected with other people. They've worked with industry projects for their research. They've worked with governments for their projects, so they know people. Connect with them. Ask them for help and say, hey, this is a topic I'm interested in working. Do you know someone there? Can I talk to them this way? Ask for their support and their feedback on your communication to person A, person B as well. Going back to the in-person one, fear of socializing, but again, I want to circle back to that point, is relatively common, I think, among a lot of PhDs. A lot of PhDs I've noticed have a tendency to become like more introverted because they're kind of like stuck in between the four walls of doing their research and don't have a lot of opportunity to kind of like go out there. So put yourself out there where you have opportunities to be sociable and connect, because that helps on the long run when it comes to networking, going to industry nights, going to Green Biz or Green Build or a bunch of these other non-academic based conferences, and helps you connect with people. And always carry a business card. Always carry a business card. You will never know who you're going to meet. Always carry a business card, some form of contact, be it like an online business card where you can scan the QR code, or a physical business card. Always carry one.
Thanks, MK. And just to say, yeah, please reach out to faculty and staff to connect to awesome, amazing alumni. They're fantastic. Okay. The last prompted question. What tips do you have for converting CVs into resumes? Carlos, we'll start with you.
Well, here you have to acknowledge you have trade-offs to do. Like, you have to leave things out because a resume is shorter and it's like a shorter version of your CV. And I think we have to be mindful about the fact that we are biased about our own stuff. And sometimes if we have something that it was really valuable for us or cost us a lot of time or money or effort, we tend to emphasize that. And sometimes it's not the right approach. So sometimes it's not related with the job you're applying to. So I think having someone else reviewing your documents and identifying these connections, like, you have to be aware that there's a profile that a person like with the skills they're looking for certain profile, and you have to highlight your skills and your education and like your results and all the experience you have in order to match that profile. And I think and yeah, for me was complicated, like trying to not mention this or not mention the other thing that it was like really important for me, but it wasn't related at all with the position that I was applying. And the other like piece of advice that I have is bragging notes. It's like having like notes about things you should brag about. So because sometimes we normalize things like, oh, I'm leading this grant proposal, and it's like normal because, oh, this part of my job, or this procurement process I'm leading, oh, okay, it's part of my job. But if you see it from the perspective of a hiring process, this is valuable, and you should keep notes about this, about things that matters in a way that are impactful in the market. And yeah, we tend to normalize everything because it's part of my day-to-day. But in the, like, overall, that those kind of projects, those kind of actions are meaningful for any other process. So just keep notes about anything you're doing, and anything like important projects you're becoming a member or part of, and any community projects you're participating. Anything matters, everything matters, and I think that's a key component for your next job or your next project or your next maybe company you're creating, or anything you want to do in the future, or a podcast, or any business you want to do, like, or a nonprofit organization you're creating from scratch. Everything is going to be adding value to this proposition you're creating.
Thanks, Carlos. Gabby?
Well, I was a hiring manager for a long time, so I reviewed thousands of resumes before I even knew what a CV was. But if you have to go the other way around, from a CV to a resume, again, definitely what Carlos said. Now, from a hiring manager perspective, I always say you don't only have to have one resume. You can have very many different versions of your resume depending on who's looking at it. Who is your customer for your resume, right? What are you trying to pitch? What do you want them to know about you? And so I would say that you would want to have a different resume for either a different industry or a different company or a different organization in a different sector. So I would say customize your resumes, have different versions of your resume depending on who you're pitching it to. That's one of the things that I think it doesn't have to be just one resume. And then the second thing is, you definitely have to keep it short, no more than 2 pages. People, again, your resume speaks for you, and that real estate on that page needs to be used to sell yourself. Basically, is your walking ad. And so I always tell people, don't use that real estate space freely. I mean, really think about what is it that you want people to know about you that's gonna get them to follow up with you. It's almost like opening a book, right? You want to hook the reader at the beginning, otherwise they're just gonna put the book aside. So your resume, you need to talk about at Intel we use the question, so what? Don't talk about what you did. Talk about how what you did led to some impact result, whether it's qualitative or quantitative, but really talk about the contribution that you made and why that's important. So again, in past resumes we're like, oh, I worked at this project and I did this and I did that, but is not more. I think today is more important to talk about not what you did, but why you did why what you did matters. So again, just a little bit different perspective on putting together your resume, and that's the best advice I can give you on resume writing. I have different versions of my resume, and they highlight different things, but definitely, again, if your research is a big part of your contribution, then you should definitely highlight it. And also highlight your volunteer work is really important.
Thanks, Gabby. MK.
I kind of want a second a lot of things that Gabby just said, because again, when I was asking for people for feedback regarding my resume, the first thing that they said is always have a summary about yourself up top, because people are looking at you. There is a very good chance that the work you've done is very similar to a work done by someone else. So your experience section, there's a very good chance that it's going to look very similar to another applicant. But the place where you can really, really differentiate yourself is talking about yourself up front, the first 2 lines of your resume, which kind of like projects who you are and what you want to do and what your goal is. That I think was like a very useful perspective for me when I was building my resume. And within the experience section of a resume, I've learned from feedback is that it is super helpful to focus more on the outcome of your work, what you have been able to achieve through that work, rather than what the work itself was, because you have a PhD, so people already know you have the skills to do it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have graduated with a PhD. That's like a given. But what is the outcome you have achieved is a very critical piece of information that you need to communicate through your resume. Someone told me when I was talking to a bunch of people with career coaching experiences is your CV is kind of like a lecture. Your resume is like an elevator pitch for your lecture, which is to me was a great analogy. I'm like, you have a very condensed space. You need to be very effective on what you want to communicate. So you do need to kind of like restructure your resume based on the job application you are submitting this resume for, because some jobs would require more quantitative skills, some jobs may require more qualitative skills, some jobs may be a balance between the two. You need to be able to highlight the outcomes you have been achieved that suit the job description. So having this generic resume, it's not a great setup. You definitely need a more focused resume based on the job that you are applying for, and put in the time to like restructure it. Try to use some of the keywords that they have used in the job description. Go through the job description, find the keywords that they've used, because there's a very good chance those are the keywords that the filtering mechanism uses through a lot of these online programs that are processing your resumes. So find what keywords there are on the job descriptions, try to use that in your resume description in the appropriate point. I really do think attaching a cover letter to a resume is a very, very useful practice, because now you have a little bit more real estate to talk about yourself and your skills and what you can bring to the table. So that combination of resume plus cover letter is a very powerful tool. And most job applications say, oh, cover letter is optional online, but put in that extra effort to do the cover letter to show that you put in the work, you put in, you know what the job requirement is, and you are the candidate to fill that position. So it gives you that opportunity to do that. So in my mind, when the question says converting your CV into a resume, I'm thinking resume plus cover letter as that combination. Last but definitely not the least is list out your volunteering experiences, because you say you can show that there are a specific set of moral values that you prioritize a lot. And typically that falls under the volunteering experiences piece, but you can make that into a very, very, very strong section. And that helps you communicate, this is my stance on very specific things. And that is because that tells you that you're not, those are things that are non-negotiable on your end. Those are values that you don't want to negotiate on. And I think that is very valuable as well when it comes to listing out some of the key aspects and your model values. And professional organizations and certificates, definitely helpful. List them on there, even if it's, when I was at ADC, I went and got the Lean Six Sigma Yellow Belt program. It was a half-day workshop you added it. It really isn't something that I use a lot at work, but that's a skill I was able to sell. Say, I can be very efficient when I do my work because I understand these existing preset frameworks. So even if you think it may not necessarily be something that's not related to your work right now, but list it. You can still use it and reframe it to sell it on your resume.
Thanks, MK. Florian.
Okay, I mean, you already heard so much. I don't know what to add. And it's probably overwhelming, but I had a couple little things. Like MK mentioned the ATS, the application tracking system. It's something that's relevant for especially bigger organizations. So make sure when you apply for bigger organizations, and sometimes also smaller ones too, that your resume is ATS eligible in that sense. There's software online where you can test whether your resume would filter through. So use that. My God, again. And so that would be, don't use a column in your, like 2 columns in your resume or anything like that. It needs to be simple. Also that if you're not an arts major, PhD or anything like that and applying for an arts job, likely is your resume doesn't need to look fancy. It needs to be practical. It needs to consider the experience. It needs to be, the words need the right one. Keywords are absolutely key. The other piece is I had my resume looked over by someone who I didn't know before, but someone was like, hey, you should talk to them. And I reached out and they reached out back and were like, hey, can you send me your resume before we meet? I had a meeting with that person for 45 minutes and they were shredding me. And I felt like it was a really bad experience because it took it personal, but it wasn't. It was practical and very much professional, world oriented to look at this resume and take it piece by piece and reorder it and rethink it. And the processing after really got me thinking about how I frame myself out there. And so sometimes networking, we brought this up earlier, is not about networking for a job, or it's about networking for networking. It's about networking for feedback. It's about networking for help. We have all these different things. And even for a resume, it's super important. And yeah, it's great to have friends look over that. But often when you're in academia, you are surrounded by academics. So there's just not the best practical experience around you. So you need to reach out further. And that's what I did. And it was tragic almost. But all that said, I think one tool that I used was ChatGPT, and many people will be like, what, why, and how? And I used the free version 3.5. So I was just copy pasting the application and got the keywords, got what was the message, etc. And obviously that is not guaranteed the process. You need to still double check a couple things. Same about what would cover letter look like for an organization like that with all these keywords? You can get some back and forth. ChatGPT is a great reviewer, a great editor for you. So I didn't acknowledge ChatGPT in the application because that would be weird, but it was definitely a tool that helped me come along.
Excellent advice. I just wanted to take a moment to thank all of you for sharing these thoughts with us. And I want to take a moderator's prerogative for a second before we turn it over to the open questions. I was thinking a lot about what the 4 of you said, and there was one thing that struck me and made me think back to my days. I was in industry as a strategy consultant before academia. And Carlos, you used the phrase, some brags, and I think this is really important. And I just wanted to emphasize this for the students when you're in an interview situation or even in the networking situation, these interviews are asking a set of questions, and you kind of know what these questions are going to be. There may be a wild card here or there, but you know more or less that they're going to ask a question that's asking for your skills, your strengths, etc. And when you have the brags that Carlos was talking about, that Gabby was referring to, that all of the panelists were talking about, you should know the strengths and skills that you want to emphasize and have the stories that go with them. These are Carlos's brags, right? So when they ask that question, whatever format that is, you have the story to tell that exemplifies the skills that match the keywords that MK was talking about, that then link back. So you're already set up, you know those. This is something that you can prepare beforehand, and your friends and colleagues can help you do that. I'll end there. Melissa, back to you. Thanks so much, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. So I don't see any questions in the chat, but if anyone has questions, go ahead and raise your hands or put them in the chat. And while we're waiting, Mary can read some questions that were sent in on the RSVP.
Melissa, we have a couple hands up already.
Oh, I can't see them all. Hold on.
Looks like Yasmin and Deepan.
Oh, I see him. Okay. Let's go, Deepan.
Yeah, hi. Thanks a lot for organizing this. This was really helpful. I still have a couple of questions. If time permits, I'd love if you can go through both. But first, I'd like to ask Dr. Natarajan. So I think he might have faced similar F1 student visa problems, which I might face when if I get admission next year. So apart from the fellowship or the PhD stipend, is there anything else you could do while your PhD, I mean, in terms of grant proposal or consultancy or something like that on your F1 visa?
Typically, the grant needs to be associated with your F1 work. So that is kind of like the legal requirement. So either you get a grant, you bring it in with you, or you apply for an RA fellowship within the university. Once you get there, it might be with your professor, or it might be with someone else in another department. That setup is a little bit more flexible, but once you're within the F1 setup, then you're not allowed to work outside of the academic unit to fund yourself. So you will need to find like funding opportunities within the university setting of which is sponsoring your F1 visa. So if it's with ASU, then it needs to be a funding opportunity through ASU, not from another university or other entities.
Got it. Thank you.
Great. Yasmin, do you have a question as well? Awesome.
Yes. So thank you very much for organizing this fantastic event. I actually have two questions. My first question goes for Florian. You mentioned something kind of a personal model that you developed for your career search. I was wondering if you tell me a little bit more about that, what exactly you mean by that? Like, is this a kind of a strategy to build up when you're still student, or what components you highlight more for that? And my second question goes across the board. Everyone can jump in. So for qualitative methods, as we are more into qualitative space, at least I'm working in the qualitative space, and don't have that much familiarity with numerical analysis and statistics. What specific qualitative method you think is asked by the industry or is more in demand for the industry jobs? Thank you.
Well, I'll just go ahead with the first question. I think there may have been a misunderstanding. I didn't have any like model for application. There was a time where I mentioned model where I was saying that the energy systems model stuff that I work with now, I need to relate that to my climate model experience from my master's or like where you start. And that was the only time where I used model. I do not have a model for application or for the job market in that sense.
Maybe about the ChatGPT supporting your analyzing your CV, and maybe that was the question. I don't know. But I will jump in with for the other question. I think, data is used for anything like nowadays. So yeah, we use data for everything, and having this background is important. But I think there's multiple qualitative approaches you can use. For example, I didn't know, and I'm learning about, for example, clean procurement or sustainable procurement, all this everything related with the procurement process. And I think this is really important because everything, at least in any organization, they need a procurement process to get renewable energy, to get anything. Well, I'm just talking about renewable because this is my day-to-day, but this is important. And I think having the skills to more like be prepared to the market, I think be prepared to learn new stuff. And I think this is a key component for doing a PhD. We are learning how to produce new knowledge, but at the same time, how to produce new knowledge based on multiple ways and multiple approaches. And I don't know if that answered the question.
If I can just add on to what Carlos said there, which were a set of skills that you're focusing on right now, it's a good starting point, because once you go into an industry, whether you're running your own business or working for another company or in a think tank, qualitative data and quantitative data are going to be working hand in hand. They don't exist in a silo. So it's important for both set of skills to be able to kind of like be working or talking to each other. So if you're developing strategies based on qualitative data, there is going to be a need down the line to have some quantitative metrics to assess progress from those strategies. So how will you build your qualitative strategy model such that there can be KPIs associated with it, key performance indicators that are associated with it? So those two things, from at least my experience, has always been like, especially in the industry, they definitely go hand in hand. Developing policy and strategies is a very, very important decision-making information, but to support and kind of like develop newer strategies as you achieve your goals also is kind of like trying to move forward. So being able to build your models, build your assessments in a way where there is some transition between the qualitative aspects as well as the quantitative aspects is going to be critical, irrespective of which industry you're in or which kind of like public-private research space you're in. So don't kind of like silo yourself without having the opportunity to understand the other side of that coin, because both sides of the coin are necessary.
Yeah, the one thing I would add, I think MK, you got right onto it. It really depends on what is the question, right, that you're trying to answer. And sometimes qualitative will work best to meet the need of the question. Sometimes it might be mixed methods, and sometimes it may be quantitative. As a research person, you need to be familiar with all of them, and you don't need to necessarily be an expert in all of them. But also, I think the determination of the method that you'll use will highly depend on what is it that you're seeking to answer. And I can tell you in industry, I mean, they use qualitative methods a lot in focus groups, in interviews, in surveys. What's key is not so much the method, but it's the findings, right? How did you, what information do you derive from that data, whether it's qualitative or quantitative? What is the data telling you? It's not, I would definitely, discourage anyone from just showing charts of numbers or, we had 50 respondents and 10 said yes and 40 said no. Well, what does that mean? I think MK, you said it, your data, your analysis, your findings, more than likely are going to influence a decision. So it's really important that you pick the right set of methods and the right tools.
Thank you, everyone.
So it looks like we have 2 questions in the Q&A. And Erica asked, what are some tips for staying organized while networking? For example, to keep track of who you've spoken with, when, and the topic.
I hardly understood the question or anything. Like, it was really hard to hear.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. So I put it on the screen just so you can see it all.
I don't think we can see it.
No, we can't see it.
I think you need to move one forward.
Can everyone hear me okay? I can just jump off. That was my question. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, so I was just curious. I don't struggle so much with, being in a networking space so much as keeping it organized, especially if you're at like a conference, you get lots of business cards, like everyone's kind of communicating on different platforms. And so, maybe like a Rolodex is sort of, we don't use those as much anymore, but like, how, is there something like that you have used, or, what organization tools have you used to help you keep track of all of that?
The first thing I did right after my first conference was actually buy a Rolodex so that I can store all my business cards. I still have it, and it's super helpful when I start thinking about different problems and people maybe I need to connect for work. So that's definitely a good investment. It helps you keep track. With regards to the online LinkedIn-based connections, it can get overwhelming, either LinkedIn or via email. On my Gmail, I think there's a setting, or maybe on my Outlook, it'll kind of like give me a reminder that this email came in 2 days ago and you have not replied or responded to it. I have that setting on, so that helps me keep track of a lot of my emails that come in, especially when it's very specific to different topics. That's what I've used to organize myself on the online setting, but I am someone also who likes to take a lot of notes at these conferences. So as soon as I finish talking to someone, I note their name down. So that kind of like gives me an indication that this is a person either I should connect or should expect some form of like communication from them. And I have that list going till I get through to the end of the list. These are kind of like some approaches I've taken that has helped me kind of like try to make sure I connect with people and stay as organized as possible, because conferences and networking events are definitely like chaotic because there's a lot of people within like a very condensed time frame.
Great, thank you. So we have one more written question that came in through the Q&A. Someone asked, I'm curious if you knew going into the PhD program that your end goal wasn't necessarily academia, and if so, how did that impact the research you conducted and the sort of work experience you pursued or sought during your PhD? I'm also curious about how it impacted your choice of programs to when you were searching for programs.
I mean, Gabby, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I was again intentional when it came to make decisions about the programs. Actually, the program that I thought I needed, I don't think it existed. I didn't even know where to begin. There, you know, I didn't know if I should go to gender studies. I didn't know if I should go to the, you know, school of innovation, or, you know, there wasn't a nice tidy box of the type of research that I wanted to do. I'm just really quite thankful that the human and social dimensions of science and technology program, I think it had just started when I started, and I just had to find somewhere, a space where I could do the research that I wanted to do. So I met with several faculty. I met with chairs of the different programs to talk about what I wanted to do and how what I wanted to do could potentially fit within the scope of what that particular college or school was doing. So for me, I think, again, it was very intentional. And it was so funny because I had a moment, I think, when I was applying to the program where I was told that no one cared about my topic of research, and that there was a good chance that I would never make it into the program. And so my answer to that was, well, Arizona State and this college are going to lose out when another school gets the benefit of my research. And you know, again, bragging point here, whoever said that, is I was selected as the National Science Foundation Chair for STEM Education because I decided to assert myself in not taking no for an answer, and saying I will find the right school and the right program to match my passion and my interest in research. And I would say for whoever, again, is thinking about this, is don't let anyone stop you. Just assert yourself, find the right fit. If it's not in this program, if it's not in this school, there's going to be somebody that's going to care about your research.
Thank you. That was great.
Just adding a quick comment, and you have to care about your research. I think you have to love your research, and there's like a weird relationship, like love-hate relationship with your research. But at the end, I'm proud of the product that I have, and I deliver a great product, and I love it. So you have to care of the things you're researching. So I think that's the only thing that I can add.
Great. Well, I want to be mindful of time. I know we might have a couple questions left, but feel free to reach out. You can still connect with us here, the grad staff, as well as our panelists via email or LinkedIn. And we have a couple other notes in the chat here. But thank you all so much for coming. And, you know, just a quick plug for our career development resources through the School of Sustainability and the College of Global Futures. We have a whole team that is here to support our students and also connect you with alumni. And, you know, we talked a lot about networking and how important it is through this whole panel session tonight. So I just want to remind you all that, you know, we're excited to connect you, and our career development team is also really excited to work with you. So when you're ready, please make an appointment. And I think we have one last slide here, if Mary wants to put that up with our contacts.
If you can allow screen sharing, I'll put it.
Yeah, let me see. There we go. Great.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It was good. It was nice to talk about all these experiences and share.
Great. Really wonderful. I liked hearing what you're all up to as well. Some of you that I haven't seen in a long time, MK. So
Yes, it was so good to see you all.
nice.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, and we do have a PhD resource guide that is newly created. The link's here in the chat. Mary just popped it in. And so, yeah, we're working on building out tools and events for students. So if you have ideas, we're always happy to take them and hopefully implement any of those that come our way.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, if anybody would like to follow up with any one of us, LinkedIn, you know, this is networking. So please do reach out if you have any other questions.